I'm delighted to be joined in the studio by Aggie Chambre, LBC's political correspondent, who was at the press conference with the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, earlier this hour. Aggie, very good to have you here. I mentioned a couple of things he said. How did it go down with you?
Yeah, it was really interesting. Obviously, this is his first press conference since he became Prime Minister, having only become Prime Minister yesterday. And I think it's only the fourth time we've really heard from him. He did 3 different speeches overnight, and then this is obviously his first press conference. But he seemed very upbeat. He seemed pretty relaxed on the sort of more just slightly jovial stuff. He said he was used to being called Prime Minister, but he was still happy to be called Keir. He confirmed that he's going to be moving into Downing Street. He said, haven't quite unpacked yet. And he also said that he's going to be going on this 4 Nations tour. He said he's got a mandate from all 4 nations. He's going to be going on a tour first to Scotland starting tomorrow.
How significant do you think it was, Aggie, in the room that he actually mentioned the 4 nations? Because it struck me that he was basically giving a veiled dig to nationalists, particularly the SNP, that this has actually been a vote for the union.
Yes, I think so. I mean, it's interesting that already this is the second time that he's sort of put in a picture of people that didn't vote for him.
Yes.
He knows that he got a relatively low vote share of 34%, I think it was. And so he knows he's got that slightly lower vote share. So he knows he really needs to, I guess, increase his popularity and sort of reach beyond the spectrum of people that already voted for him. So I think quite a lot of what we'll see in the first few days will be in response to that as well. He wants to assure people that he will vote for them. The other interesting things as well was he confirmed, as we expected, that the Rwanda scheme is dead. I spoke to someone earlier who said, there will just be absolutely no more work on that. So that absolutely won't be happening as well. And he wouldn't make a commitment to scrap the 2-child limit. But another thing that has been interesting over the last 24 hours, after he appointed his cabinet, he also started appointing ministers. And one minister was very interesting, not from a political background at all, and that's James Timpson.
Very interesting.
Very interesting. So he is basically this guy who set up Timpson's and has had a huge role in reforming prison, in sort of talking about prison reform, and hires a lot of ex-prisoners into his workplace. He's also said before that he doesn't think, James Timpson has said previously that he doesn't think that a third of people that are in prison, only a third of people that are in prison should definitely be there. So that was something I asked Keir Starmer about. Does he agree with his new prisons minister?
Well, look, the prison minister has huge experience here and has invested a huge amount over many years in relation to prisons, and that's why I wanted to make that appointment. We do need to be clear about the way in which we use prisons. We need to get away from the fact that for so many people come out of prison, they're back in prison relatively quickly afterwards. That is a massive problem that we have in this country that we do need to break. And that's why I was very pleased to put James into post, someone who hasn't just talked the talk, has actually walked the walk for many years in this respect. And I think I was very pleased to make that appointment, very pleased to have spoken with him, about the change that we can bring about.
It's interesting that he says it's a massive problem, but he didn't actually really answer whether or not he does agree with his new prison ministers on that.
He's only been there 24 hours, Aggie.
Well, I mean,
no,
yes,
it's an interesting point.
He has only been there for 24 hours, but he knows that he has got he keeps saying it. He's got a really uphill challenge. He's got problems with the economy, problems with the NHS. He is saying the government message now on the NHS is it's broken. Same with prisons.
Yes.
So, he has only been there for 24 hours, but he knows that his honeymoon period will be very short if he can't make some progress very quickly on those areas.
Very short indeed, probably about 10 minutes. He also mentioned about the fact that he's going to the NATO meeting, and he's also got the European Political Community meeting coming up at Blenheim Palace, the lovely Blenheim Palace in Oxfordshire, which is now a Tory-free zone, only in a few weeks' time. So he's going to be on the world stage imminently.
In just 3 days, I think NATO is. Yeah, and he's obviously already been having calls with world leaders, but he has got an awful lot to do, and as we say, not a huge amount of time to do it. Just on that as well, he did confirm that that he has said before there'll be 2.5% on defence, but there's still no date or timeline on that either. And he also said he had his cabinet meeting this morning, and he said that he was very clear with his cabinet that he expects the highest standards from them, with sort of, it felt like a bit of a jab at the previous administration.
Absolutely. Standards, delivery and trust, he said. Aggie, thank you so much. That was Aggie Chambre, LBC's political correspondent, bringing us up to date.